My turn. I don't even know. Hi, everybody. Nomalanga here. Welcome to our weekly homeschool question and answer webinar. I'm here to answer your questions. If you haven't already, just pop in the comment. I'm sorry, it's the chat session. And just let me know that you can see me and that you can hear me so that we can get started. Have a great turnout today. I hope you guys will get the answers that you need. Again, if you're not signed up for the short course that is at the Black Business School, the link is the blackhomeschoolguide.com. I'll put it here in the message, in the chat. The blackhomeschoolguide.com. And I'm going to send that to all attendees. Okay, so the short course at the Black Homeschool, at the Black Business School about homeschooling is a short course that you can join. The first month is free. That's enough time for you to get through some of the lectures and see if it's helpful to you. It should be helpful if you're genuinely and seriously considering homeschooling your children, or rather converting your family to a homeschool family, because it really is a family experience. Again, it's at the blackhomeschoolguide.com. First month is free, and then you can continue after that. As long as you're enrolled in the course, please, please, please feel free to use me. I'm available here on these weekly webinars. I am also available if you're friends with me on Facebook or follow me on Facebook. If you inbox me, please let me know that you're enrolled in the course so I can give you priority. A lot of people inbox me and ask me questions, especially about homeschooling and especially about building their businesses, because we also have another course that I have a lecture series with Dr. Boyce Watkins about converting from working full-time to building your own business, and it really helps you with what I call the nuts and bolts and the mind shift that needs to take place before you can stop working a full-time job and being self-employed. I'm saying all that to say, please let me know when you inbox me that you're enrolled in one of our courses so that I can give you priority, because I can't always answer everybody's questions. There's just too many. If you're just joining us, there's more people coming in. I'm just going to give people maybe 2 more minutes to come in. We had over 1,200 people register for tonight's webinar. So I just want to give people a few minutes to just jump in. If you're just joining us, my name is Nomalanga. Welcome. I'm here to answer your questions about transitioning from public or private school to a homeschool environment. We sometimes will have some experts who will join me, whether they are education, teaching, or homeschool experts. They will also be here to answer your questions, and in that case I will take on more of a moderator's role. But for today it's just me, and I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to answer your questions. As well as the chat session, there's also a Q&A section, and you can just jump in there and please start asking your questions. Last week, we did about 1 hour and 20 minutes, and I got to everybody's questions. I was very happy about that. Today, we do have to keep it to 60 minutes. What I do is that I do jot down the questions that I don't get to, and then next week when I start with the questions from the previous week. If you don't get through this whole recording and you are enrolled in the course, it goes up on the course as additional lectures, and that's at the blackhomeschoolguide.com, the blackhomeschoolguide.com. Okay, Lady says good morning from Sacramento. Charles says, yes, we can see you and hear you. Thank you. If you're just joining us, please let me know that you can see me and that you can hear me. Also, please feel free to jump into the Q&A section and answer your questions. I do not have a lecture prepared. This is a question and answer session. If you don't ask questions, it'll just be a shorter session. So please go ahead and answer your questions. There are no silly questions. Janelle says, much appreciation from Denver. Thank you. You're very welcome. Please do answer your questions. Please do ask your questions and I will answer them. It's okay if we've answered it before, because I think that every single week, most of the people are new to the webinar. So they might sometimes ask a question that we may have answered before, but that's okay. You know, if you're transitioning to homeschooling, what you're becoming is a teacher, and one of the things that you'll soon learn, especially with teaching smaller children, is that teaching, the thing that works the most is repetition, repetition, repetition. Okay. Okay, so it is 6 minutes after 12. For those of you that are here for the first time, this is a weekly webinar. We are here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. If you're all the way across the ocean like I am for now, which is in Botswana or South Africa, that is 6 p.m. in the evening. So that is 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, which will be 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, and then it's going to be 6 p.m. in South Africa and Botswana. Every Thursday, guys, okay? And one more time, the link is the blackhomeschoolguide.com, the blackhomeschoolguide.com, where you get a quick lecture series on how to transition from the public school or private school to a homeschool environment. It really is a fun process. We've been homeschoolers. We started the transition in 2012 and officially started the homeschool journey in 2013. We have 3 children. Our oldest is our daughter. She is turning 14 soon. We have an 11-year-old son and a 4-year-old son. Our bonus baby is 4. All of them have been homeschooled. And recently, because we were in Botswana, quote unquote, Africa, we did expose them to actual public school so that they could experience the school system under the conditions that we wanted, where the school principal was somebody that looked like them, so was the assistant principal and all the teachers and most of the students. Diversity comes in different ways, but they had the advantage of being in an environment where everybody looked like them, and we thought that that has been a great experience for them. Okay, guys, I'm waiting on your questions. So far, I don't have any questions, so please do jump in there, ask your questions. If along the way you have a comment or we want to clarify something, please feel free to jump into the chat section, and then I will read the comment. Lady says, my 3rd grade granddaughter is very social and wants to go back to school. What is the best way to do homeschooling with traditional school that would overwhelm her? I think you mean that wouldn't overwhelm her and me. Okay, so the question is to do homeschooling with traditional school. Okay, so we started homeschooling supplemental. So what we did was, like, for instance, in the American public school system, all the way up to college, they omit a lot of Black history and African history, which I feel, and I'm not the only person who feels that way. Black children or children of African descent should know more about themselves, who they are, where they come from. Even if you're just talking about their history within the United States, not even going back into Africa, they need to know who they are. They need to know their history, and they need to study it. The public school system and the private school system in the United States really does not offer that. So we were always supplementing that. And then also the other thing that we supplemented was, I guess I'll call it religious beliefs. We had to supplement that because we didn't want our children being taught, you know, about white Jesus and all that in school. It's okay if that's what you want. We just didn't want that. So we had to supplement what did we used to call it? I think we used to call it, I think it was, at the time we called it scripture studies or something. I don't remember what we called it, but we had to supplement that part. So Black history and religious studies, we did at home, even when they were in school. Really, when one of them was in school, our daughter did kindergarten and 1st grade. Our son, who's now 11, never actually ever went to school except for preschool. And then he started kindergarten and first grade with me at home in homeschool. I'm saying that to say you can supplement, your child can be in quote unquote regular school, and then you supplement at home with what you feel is missing in the curriculum. And that's not overwhelming at all. It's just adding fun things to do and fun things to learn. Now, as far as being social actually doesn't really even work with regular school because they usually call those children disruptive. And actually, those kind of children actually work better in the homeschool environment, especially when you build co-ops and make connections with other homeschool families so that you can do activities and play sports and do other things. A lot of extracurricular stuff that you can do with other homeschool families where your child or your children can be social and it's not a problem. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Lady Livia. Feel free to ask another question. Mel says that he or she can't hear, so please reassure me that you can hear me, those of you that can hear me, and that you can see me. Mel, there's a place where you can actually, okay, Mel says she can hear now. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm on to the Q&A section. Okay, please excuse me if I don't pronounce your name right. I'm not sure if it's Husan. Says, what does homeschool look like for a 4-year-old? Okay, you've asked the right question because we actually have a 4-year-old. Let me just, okay. So we have been homeschooling our now 4-year-old since he was about 6 months old. And at 6 months old, what we were doing, what I was specifically doing was teaching him sign language. And he actually learned it. So he was signing a bit before he could talk. And then when he started learning how to communicate through talking, the sign language kind of fell away. And then the other thing is that we read to him, and it wasn't just about bedtime. Anytime he had an interest or he saw a book or something that he liked, he just loved being read to. He still does, even now at 4 years old. So it definitely does require more of your time. In terms of homeschoolers are very independent. So with the older children, they know their curriculum, they know what textbooks to do on which days and how many pages and which tests or whatever to do. So they generally just kind of do their own thing. And as a parent, you're just there as a guide or maybe to help them when they have a concept that they're struggling with. So with a 4-year-old, you're much more involved. But really, honestly, children learn at that age through play. So just do your best to expose them to numbers and colors. Our kitchen used to be full of posters with, lots of color, lots of color. You have objects and the names next to them, the letters, the numbers, and you kind of just count. And then you go through the alphabet. Then you also engage their senses, what can they see, what can they smell, what can they touch. I actually learned this because our son went to the YMCA preschool, and I learned that they had all these stations where the children interacted with different things. They could play even playing in a sandbox. They're experiencing the textures and then go do some Play-Doh. So they're engaging their senses with flowers outside, smelling the flowers and noticing the colors. It's just really playing and trying to inject little lessons or learning new things or just repeating things that they already know. So it's really just spending time with your baby and teaching them whatever they're interested in. My personal philosophy as a teacher that I developed when I started homeschooling our children is that you really, really have to follow the children's interests. Those of you that have heard me speak about our homeschool experience are probably tired of me telling you about this, but our son couldn't read. Our oldest son couldn't read until he was 7 years old. He just wasn't interested. By the time that he was 7, he was, around first or second grade, and he was doing math at the second, third, sometimes fourth grade level, but he just wasn't interested in language, whether it was reading, writing, and any of that. And, I had this fear that he was falling behind, that we were not doing homeschooling right or whatever. But he calls himself an engineer, even now at 11 years old. He was so interested in programming and coding. And guess what? We bought like these, I think it was Scratch that he started with. Scratch is like a kiddie type of programming language or programming learning tool. And we bought that, and he actually started to read because he realized that you can't learn how to code and program without reading the instructions. And then suddenly he was so keen to read. He wanted to practice every single day. And after maybe 2 years, of being so frustrated and feeling so defeated that he was not reading, he learned how to read within about a month or two. And now he's a voracious reader because he loves to read to learn how to do new things. So I'm saying all that to say, one of the things that, like I said, I've adopted as a philosophy is you have to follow their interest. So he's very interested in things that are that have to do with technology, programming, creating cartoons, all kinds of things. We with our daughter, the older 2 children, we built a whole website for them, and they are going to start a business. All of those things require them to do things like math, learn coding, how to create the website, how to add color, remove color, change things. All of those things were a learning experience. And because they were interested, they were able to learn without me kind of feeling like I had to force it on them. So I hope that answers your question about a 4-year-old. Mel says it's not even okay to teach white Jesus because that is a lie. I feel the same way, but like I said, I've learned how to be, how to go through our journey and not impose our journey on other people. Carrie says, hi, how do you choose the curriculum that you teach your children? Okay, so Carrie, again, I've answered this question before, but I'm happy to answer it again. The first year that we homeschooled, we used what's called a box set. So you basically buy a curriculum. But even as I chose a box set, we started homeschooling in the state of Massachusetts. So what I did was I went to the Department of Education website, and I went through the grade levels to see what subjects are required. So there are some subjects that are required. And of course, if you follow the 3 R's, we have 4 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic being mathematics. And the fourth one that I added was reasoning, which is logic and critical thinking. So if you follow those 4, you basically cover the core subjects. But there'll be other subjects like I think science, geography, some form of social study. So you have to go to your specific state and then maybe a specific school district to see what subjects are being covered at each grade level. And then you can buy a box set. I do highly recommend a box set. We only used it that first year. And then the second year, I felt confident enough that as long as I knew what the subjects were, I could look through textbooks and decide which ones would work best for the children. And then the other thing is, when you start with a textbook, if it's not working, feel free to change it. Because that's the autonomy and that's the freedom that you have in homeschooling, is that you don't have to follow anything rigid. You basically have to do what works for you and what works for your children. So the short answer to your question is we use a box set, okay? And I recommend a box set because it takes the pressure off of you because I happen to be an educator, but most of us homeschooling parents are not educators. So we don't know how to write curriculums, write lesson plans. So when you buy a box set, it comes with everything. And the tip that I always give to parents is when you get a box set and it comes with the answers, take out the answers and keep them for yourself for 2 reasons. Number one, even the most well-behaved, most honest child will sometimes be tempted to look at the answers. That's the first thing. The second thing is, no matter how smart you are as a person, there'll come a time where you're totally stumped and it's like second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade math, language or something, and you just don't know what the answer is, but you're the teacher. So when it comes with answers, at least you can guide your learner because you know the answer and you're guiding them to arrive at the answer. Okay, I hope that's helpful, Carrie. Dana says, what resources do you use to supplement history? For example, websites, books, etc. Okay, so I won't go through those because I don't know them off the top of my head, but I have said that if you're not signed up for the course at the blackhomeschoolguide.com, I did promise that at some point I will put on, if you go to the link, you can't access the lectures unless you are actually signed up. But there are some lectures that are previews. So I did promise that I would put up a resource list, and I still will do that, a resource list over there. So even if you're not signed up, you'll be able to see the resources, okay? I will do that, but it won't be, I won't just leave it there. I'm gonna do it maybe for a month and then put it back behind the veil of you gotta sign up to access the resources, okay? Christina says, what curriculum is recommended? Are there curriculums that are required to homeschool? I think the previous questions answered that. Like I said, go to the Department of Education in your specific state and then find out what subjects are required, right? And then if you're not sure how to build a curriculum, which most of us are not, we're not teachers generally, we're just parents who want the best for our children. You won't really know how to create a curriculum. You won't know how to do lesson plans. You just won't know. And a box set is helpful because everything comes kind of prepared for you and you just have to unpack it and guide your children through it or guide your child through it. So here's an easy tip, okay? Let's say you have the, there are 365 days in a year. Let's say you homeschool out of those 365 maybe for 300 days. Maybe less, whatever, okay? If you have a textbook that's let's say you're homeschooling for 250 days out of the year, a textbook that has 500 pages, it means 2 pages a day, right? Or it means every other day, 4 pages. That's how I used to break things up and it felt, and we would kind of feel it out. Sometimes 2 pages a day in one textbook was done in like 5 minutes, and that's too short. So then we wouldn't do the course the subject every single day. We do it maybe twice a week or 3 times a week and increase the number of pages or the number of lessons. Or sometimes it's about concepts, right? Let's say a textbook has a certain number of concepts and you want, let's say in a year, 52 weeks or however many weeks. Out of those 52 weeks, you're not going to be homeschooling all 52, not likely, right? Let's say you're doing 40 weeks and there's 20 concepts. That means for each concept, 2 weeks, right? If they go through the textbook part of it and they're finished in 1 week, then the second week they can do it in practice, right? And you can find little activities. I mean, Google is your friend. Find activities. So our homeschool circles, homeschool groups online especially, or even in real life. Find little activities and projects and things that will help them implement the learning or reiterate the concept that they're learning in those 2 weeks. If it's a country, have them maybe make a pen pal that comes from the country and learn about it, or continent, whatever it is. I keep saying it, guys, please try to have fun with your homeschooling experience. Don't make it a horrible experience. I find that most adults that I meet hate math. And the reason why they hate math is it was something that was unbearable and unpleasant in school. But it can be a very, very enjoyable thing if you show children how it applies to their life, okay? I hope that's helpful for you. Whose question was I answering? I was answering Christina. Christina says, thank you, that helped me a lot. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so we have some other, please continue to ask questions in the Q&A or even here in the comments. Charles says, does your homeschooling cover complete school curriculum so our kids don't need to go into a school classroom? And what's the highest grade you cover. Okay, so I need to clarify this, okay? I do not offer homeschooling. I offer a guide for parents how to homeschool. So you are not going to be able to just sign up for the course that I'm talking about and then your children will be magically homeschooled. No, it's basically a how-to. It takes you through the process of how to get your kids out of the school system and into a homeschool environment. It goes through the laws of different states. It goes through curriculum design, curriculum selection. Like I said, I personally recommend box sets. And it just basically, and even the mindset that you have to embrace. A lot of people, a lot of parents feel very, very insecure. Like I said, I have a background. I have a master's in teaching. I have a master's degree in teaching, and I was a teacher at the college level for years. I was a teaching assistant when I was in college, so I have a lot of experience in teaching and training. But when it came to teaching my own little children, and they were small, I suddenly felt very insecure and very inadequate because I was not trained to teach little children. Most of us are not, okay? So this isn't about just taking something and then rolling it out and then backing off. No, you have to be involved in the process of helping them choose their textbooks, selecting the subjects. You have to be the ones to report to the school district if that's necessary in your state. So what this course does is it helps you through that process. There are literally homeschoolers whose children have been taken away because they did not comply with a state that was strict. They didn't know what the rules were for homeschooling in that state, so they literally broke the law because they didn't know. So again, this takes you through that process of transitioning from homeschooling to, from regular school to homeschooling. So please understand, this is not a homeschool school where you can enroll your children in the homeschool. We do have resources that we recommend, like I know Khan Academy comes to mind. And even if you do an online homeschooling platform, I do not recommend that all subjects are done just on one platform. I would recommend maybe you do the basics like reading, writing, and arithmetic on an online platform, and then do the other subjects with textbooks, with actual life experiences. So make it diverse. Please don't try to recreate the school that you took your children out of at home. If they hated school when they were in school, and then you try to force them into school at home, they'll hate that too. And it'll be even worse because they can't get away from the teacher. It's just one teacher. At least in school, they have a diversity of teachers. And that's another thing. Please try to diversify the homeschooling environment. Join co-ops so that it's not just one mom or one mom and dad teaching all their own children. Switch it up a little bit. Get tutors, or have a math parent and then an English parent or whatever it is, based on also your own interest as a parent. Follow your own interest as well, and try to get away from the subjects that you don't like or that you don't necessarily excel at, and maybe have them do that online, and then you're just even more of a guide. Charles, I hope that's helpful. Roshika says, hello there. When you say box set, what does that consist of and where to get it? Like I said, I have a resource that I will add. I can tell you, go to, I think it was called A Time for Learning, but even if you jump on Google, just Google homeschool box sets. And then look at the reviews from other homeschoolers, and it'll emerge that there'll be some that are more popular than others. The only thing that I have a problem with the box sets is that they tend not to be created by us for us. But if that's what you need to do at the time to get started, absolutely do it, and then start exploring more African oriented or African rooted homeschool books, textbooks, platforms, and so on. So again, I really recommend that you join an online homeschool group and do an actual live one. We lived in Massachusetts. We started homeschooling while living in Massachusetts. And the town that we lived in when we decided to take our daughter out of school and our son out of preschool was completely all white. Our daughter was the only Black kid in her class, and our son was the only Black kid in his class. So trying to build a pool of other homeschoolers that we could engage with that looked like us was next to impossible. So we had to do it online. But if you live in a more diverse environment, which we did eventually move to, we moved a little about, I think 30 minutes out from where we were before. And we did end up in a town that was a little more diverse. So we were able to find leagues, and we joined the YMCA, went to the beaches, went to the parks, you know, jogged along the river, rode bikes on the river with other families. So we did find diversity, but it's not always easy. Charles says, okay, thank you, I got you, great. Mel says, I feel like my daughter wasn't being challenged enough in traditional school, so we supplemented their curriculum. Excellent. The other thing that I mentioned, I'm not sure if you all caught it, was that our son, when he first started homeschooling, he was all over the place, which is actually a good thing. It depended on where his math ability was much higher than his language ability. So let's say as a 7-year-old, he is maybe in the first grade or maybe the second grade, whatever it is. He was doing if his age-wise, he's in the first grade, he was doing second and third grade level math. But because he took so long to start reading, he was still a preschooler and a kindergartner in terms of reading, right? So he's like up and down. And then maybe with the other subjects, he was right on grade level, like geography, science. I can't remember at the time, whatever subject. And also, how many 7-year-olds do you know that learn how to code? Usually we had, in my time, we had to wait to get to college to learn coding. And even then you had to be in some kind of IT program or you couldn't learn it, right? But our children started coding when our son was 6 or 7 years old. He was already learning how to code. And my daughter's only 2 years older than him. So in terms of traditional school, you don't have to stick to the grade levels the way that you have to do in traditional school. And what happens is, I'm answering your question the long way around, Mel, is that in traditional school, because you're 7 years old and you're in the first grade or the second grade, they keep you right there. But in homeschool, if the child is not being stretched on that grade level, you have the ability to move them to the next level and the next level, because really what we focus on is concepts. If they grasp this concept, they move on to a more challenging one. Grasp the concept, move on. And that does sometimes end up being where they move on to the next grade level. So feel free to move them, to have them be all over the place, because we're focused on them progressively learning, right? They grasp a concept and then they move on to the next one. That's the most important thing. And also, if they're being challenged too much by a concept, feel free to step down and until they feel more comfortable. Because what happens is when you, just in as much as a child loses interest when they're not being challenged, if they're being too challenged and it's too hard, they disengage from that as well. So sometimes you have to step down and have them do something that may be a little bit easier or a lot easier, and let them rebuild and regain their confidence and self-esteem, and then move up to the next level. Because one thing, like, especially it happens a lot with math. Once a child gets it in their mind that this is too hard, it's so hard. It becomes such a challenge to get them to learn within that subject because they've told themselves that it's too hard. Even when it's not hard, the fact that their mindset is that it's too hard is such an obstacle. So it's very important for them to do things that they find ease in, and find ease in it for a while so that they feel good about themselves and they feel that they can do it, and then move up to the next level. Mel says, for those of you that were asking about curriculums and boxes, Mel says they use Khan Academy and also All-in-One Homeschool. So please look those two up, Khan Academy and All-in-One Homeschool. Thank you, Mel, for adding that. Guys, we're only about 35 minutes into this. I had planned to stay for a whole hour. So please do ask more questions so that we can continue to help you. If not, I will close the Q&A, but I really don't want to do that. I did give myself an hour today to help you all get started on this homeschool journey. I did notice that a lot of parents actually tried out a little bit of homeschooling without really meaning to, because we were all globally dealing with this COVID or Corona or whatever you want to call it. And people were forced into their homes, and some parents worried that their children would fall behind. So they started trying out homeschooling. And then there are those that after the whole corona and the whole COVID thing happened, they're more open to homeschooling, because one thing I can tell you about homeschooling is that you will find a lot of resistance and a lot of ignorance. Even with people who are genuinely interested in homeschooling, I still have to answer this question about, well, what about socialization? And I mean, I've answered this question 100 times, more than 100 times, and actually saying that homeschoolers actually tend to socialize more than people who put their children in school, because we have a more relaxed environment in the homeschool, and we actually tend to do more extracurricular activities. We tend to do more field trips, and we also play more sports and just do more experiential learning. That's one question that you can, I'm not sure if you look forward to it, but you can expect to get it. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys just maybe 60 more seconds to ask another question or two before I close out. Oh, okay, we have a couple more questions here. Okay, an anonymous attendee says, what's the name of the academy in Chicago and who is the director? I have no idea. I have no idea of the academy in Chicago. I'm assuming you are talking about a more African-centered, academy. So I'm sorry, I don't know what the answer to that. I would recommend just Googling an African-centered academies in Chicago. If anybody knows what you're talking about, if what this person is asking about, please feel free to jump into the chat and let us know. Like I said, we've lived in the states of New York and Massachusetts, and we never formally enrolled in any academies. We just did our own homeschool and tried as much as we could to interact with other homeschool families. And sometimes those were actually our own family members, because we do have family members that also homeschool. Please excuse me if I'm not saying your name correctly. It looks like Verkus or Virtus Miller. Do you think free homeschool curriculums are as good as paid curriculums? I've only used a Becker. Yes, I do think free ones are as good because we basically paid for a box set the first year, and then after that, we never went back to paid homeschooling. I bought most of the children's books on Amazon. Like for instance, when the homeschool box set came, the textbooks were from different vendors or different textbook companies. So if the textbook came from a certain textbook company and our children or the specific child liked it, and they were in the second grade, I think my daughter was in the second grade when we started. If she liked that textbook for the second grade, we just got it next year for the third grade and the fourth grade and so on, and kept with it. If she didn't like it, we tried a different textbook, but same subject, right? You do not have to spend a lot of money to homeschool. I actually don't recommend it, because sometimes what you've spent money on isn't going to be what works best for you, and then you have to change along the way because you have the freedom to. The best answer I can give, guys, is try different things and join homeschool circles and groups and get recommendations, especially for parents who have children with challenges. We happen to have children who were not challenged, had no learning disabilities or challenges or anything like that. So I never had to be stretched in that way, but I know that there are parents who have been stretched in that way, and having to teach a child who has different challenges that other children don't have. And it's really a good idea to connect with other parents who have children with similar challenges or just challenges in general, so you know which resources are helpful and have worked. Okay, Janelle says, I would appreciate any suggestions on African history textbooks, not African American, so we can study other parts of Africa culture, especially the wealth and royalty. Wonderful. You know what, Janelle, I will actually tap into some of the homeschool groups I'm in and into my Facebook community and compile some lists. Like I said, for those of you that are not enrolled in the course, it's at theblackHomeschoolGuide.com, theblackHomeschoolGuide.com. The first month is free, so please do go there and join. And once you get through all the lectures, every week when we do these Q&As, I will be adding them there. So if you miss a Q&A, you can actually get your questions answered. If we have a specific topic that's very interesting, I will be adding them as they come along. If people ask for resources like this, I will be adding those resources to the course. If I've promised it, I will put it as a preview so that even if you're not enrolled in the course, you can still get access to it. And then the final thing that I want to add is that if you're enrolled in the Black Homeschool Guide course, please feel free to reach out to me. It's very important that if you email me or you send me an inbox on social media that you say that you're enrolled in the course. I do give priority, unlimited questions to people who are enrolled in the course. And sometimes I just can't get to everybody's questions if they're not enrolled in our courses because you know, there's not enough time in the day, but I will always answer your questions usually almost immediately, because my laptop's always in front of me, even when I'm busy doing other things. And if it pings and I see somebody says they're in my course, I will answer. But typically within 24 hours, I will answer your questions if you're enrolled in the course. So please feel free to use that benefit. And when I don't know the answer or there's many different answers, I will tap into our community, get you an answer and get back to you, okay? So I hope that answers your question, Janelle. Linda says, I just got on the call. Have you said what materials you use for curriculum? Yes, I did. And Linda, if you go to theblackHomeschoolGuide.com, theblackHomeschoolGuide.com. It is free for the first month. You can look at the lectures and all of these Q&As that we do. For those of you that came on after I said it, we do these Q&As every single week at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. That's 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And for those of you that are overseas in South Africa and Botswana, that's 6 p.m. On Thursdays, okay? So Linda, yes, I did say that, and I said it a couple of times, so you can just watch the recording and it'll certainly answer your question, okay? Brenda says, my son is going to be entering middle school, 6th grade in the fall. The last few months, he was given a terrible education. One of my concerns is social engagement. How do I get him involved in activities within a community? Like I said, Brenda, please tap into the online community and you will actually also find people on the ground in your environment. Also, please, if he was not getting a great education, please don't rely only on yourself. There are online academies, and also engage a tutor. And when I say engage a tutor, I'm not talking about like a Kumon center. I'm talking about other parents in the homeschool environment or the homeschool community who are willing to exchange favors. So like I said, sometimes you have a math mom who just doesn't care for language, or a language mom who doesn't care for the other subjects. We were very fortunate. Our daughter had an aunt who had graduated from the Berklee School of Music, one of the best schools in the country. And she got piano lessons and she got singing lessons. Now, it wasn't free. We did have to compensate her, but it certainly was a lot less than if we had just gone as private citizens to a music or some kind of academy. So please use the people in your community. And if you haven't built a community, start building one. And if you don't have a community, there are communities that are already built online. And sometimes that's where you'll get, if you say, for instance, we started out in a small town called Wakefield, Massachusetts, which is in the Boston area. All the towns we lived in were in the Boston area. So you could tap in, and then sometimes you have to drive 20, 30, 45 minutes to get to the group. And to get that social engagement. I think the investment is worth it. So I hope that's helpful. Start online and then ask for people to recommend groups or co-ops that are in your physical space. Like I said, for us, it was tough because we lived in an all-white town. Don't ask me why we did that, but we did. We eventually moved into a more diverse town, and were able to interact with other homeschool families, and sometimes not even homeschool, just other families, so our children could get that social engagement and make friends and connections with other children. Brenda says, I'm not totally confident in teaching some of the more challenging subjects such as math and science. How do I find an online program assist? Also, how many hours are supposed to go into homeschooling to be proficient to move to the next grade? Okay, so like I said, it's very important for you, whatever state you're in, go to the Department of Education website to get all the information that you can get about which subjects are required and how many hours are required. But the thing about the number of hours that are required in homeschooling is that it's a little bit fuzzy. Because in school, for instance, I don't even remember anymore, but I think the kids used to start school, I think maybe we dropped them off at 7:30 or something like that, and then picked them up at 2:30 or 3:30. I just honestly just genuinely don't remember. So from 7:30 to 2:30, that's 7 hours that they were in school. But remember that in a school system, half of that time is spent getting them in line, getting them to sit down, getting them to be quiet. And even when you've done all that, teachers spend a lot of time managing the children's behavior. And then you have recess and you have lunch and you have all this back and forth. In the homeschool environment, you don't have to worry about all of those things as much. And sometimes what takes a 7-hour day in school is a 2, 3, maybe 4-hour day in homeschool. And then, to be honest and to keep the integrity of the school, you can infuse lessons in other family activities. Like we had so many subjects. We could make subjects out of anything, right? I remember we used to do cooking and baking, and I was just having fun with our children baking at home, and we would incorporate that in the homeschool. Even doing laundry. Our children started doing laundry at a very young age, where they would sort the clothes. I think it was whites, lights, and brights, and then darks, or something like that. And however much time they spent doing that, we counted that as homeschool hours because they were learning home economics. When we went to the grocery store and they did all the calculations, they're still homeschool economics. So it doesn't, like I said, have to be as rigid at home as it is in school. So how many hours you're supposed to put in the homeschool will be stipulated typically by the Department of Education or the superintendent. The school district will stipulate how many hours, and you can easily meet those hours. Those hours don't have to be spent on textbook learning or engaged in an online program, because like I said, that's boring. That's why children disengage in school, because they're forced to do just one kind of learning most of the time. And in the homeschool, you can diversify the methods that you use to teach. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. And to the question about not being confident in teaching subjects, just remember that you're not really the teacher, you're the guide on the sideline. Homeschoolers are more independent learners, okay? And if you have a good curriculum and they go through the curriculum, it introduces a concept, and then it repeats, and usually it'll have a little exercise that tests whether they've grasped the concept. That's how it usually goes. Introduce a concept, repeat. Repetition is how they learn, and then it tests whether they've grasped the concept. That's all that's going on. You sometimes don't have to be even involved in that process unless they're struggling, which is why in the beginning I said it's very important to always have the answers ready for yourself, not for them, so that if they're struggling with a concept, you know what the answers are, and you're guiding them through the process to get to the answer. Okay, please feel free to engage other people. It doesn't have to be an official tutor. It could be grandma, uncle, aunt, neighbor, anybody, right? Who likes that subject better. Or you could do a formal, I've known homeschool families who actually paid tutors to come to their house for subjects that they just didn't care for, and they could afford it. So if you can afford it, do it. If you can't afford it or don't want to spend the money, I certainly didn't want to spend the money, use resources that are free and available to you. I hope that's helpful, Brenda. Anonymous attendee says, I've been told I have ADHD and I want to know if you have any special classes. I kind of answered this earlier, that I personally, the course that I talk about at the blackhomeschoolguide.com is not a homeschool. It is a guide on how to homeschool. It's really a course that parents need to take if they want to transition their families to a homeschool environment. Now, as far as if we have special classes, even at the business school, we have a lot of children's courses that focus on finance, accounting, and learning how to run a business. But they are just general ed. They're not special. What I would recommend, again, guys, I think I've said this so many times already, but I'll say it again. Please join homeschool groups, even if you're doing it online. There's a wealth of knowledge. There are people who have homeschooled for generations. Well, maybe not generations. In other words, they were homeschooled and they're now homeschooling their children. So maybe a couple of generations. And they're a wealth of knowledge, because in the longer you homeschool and the more homeschoolers you know, the more resources you have access to, the more information and the more guidance and help that you can get. Okay. I hope that's helpful. Kim says, good afternoon. I'm new to the whole process. I also came in late as a beginner. Where do you suggest I start? Okay, so please take this down, thebblackhomeschoolguide.com, thebblackhomeschoolguide.com. I didn't mention this, but I'll say it now. When I had this very specific question and I started looking for resources, I honestly didn't know where to start. I just wanted somebody to tell me, here are the steps that you need to take. So I literally wrote 10 steps and then elaborated on each step and made it into a lecture. So it's 10 lectures, and then after that, we've added more information, interviews, more resources, and so on. But it literally tells you how to do it. It is free for the first 30 days. So please jump in there, thebblackhomeschoolguide.com. And if it's helpful for you, then continue. And like I said before, if you're enrolled in that course, please feel free to use me. Reach out to me, whether it's through email. Email's not great. Social media is great. Okay, or join these homeschool Q&As and ask your questions. But if you reach out to me on social media, please let me know that you're enrolled in the course, and I will give you top priority and answer you right away. Okay, so as a beginner, where do you start? Let me answer that very, very quickly in about a couple of sentences. The first thing you need to do is go to the State Department of Education. Whatever state you're in, you need to comply with their laws. Okay, please don't break the law trying to homeschool. So make sure you know what the laws are in your state. And then also find out from your school district. Go to the school superintendent for your district, to also get more information about what they require from you before you can start the homeschool process. Even if you've already pulled your child out, you can, after the fact, go ahead and go through the process. Some states are very easy. You just call school and say, hey, I'm homeschooling, and they make a note of that and they don't expect your child. Some of them put you through the ringer. We started homeschooling the state of Massachusetts, and they literally wanted me to write an explanation to them about why I think I'm qualified to teach my children. And like I said before, I have a master's degree in teaching. Okay, so they want to know that you're qualified to do it. Now, am I saying you need a degree in teaching? Of course not. That's not what homeschooling is about. It's about concerned parents who want the best education for their child, okay? So you don't have to have the degree or whatever, but what I'm suggesting is that they will want you to prove that you're competent, okay? So sometimes you have to do a bit of homework. If you've taken my course, you'll be in a better position if your state is strict, because you'll have your ducks in a row, okay? You'll have crossed your cross your T's and dotted your I's a little bit so that you can answer the questions. Some of them insist on you coming to the district and interview and so that. I call that harassment. You don't have to. There's no law that says you have to. There's also a legal service it's $10 a month, guys. There's also a legal service that I recommend that will protect you and your rights and your children's rights to be homeschoolers and not be harassed by social services or the school district or anybody demanding things from you because they don't like the idea of homeschooling or they don't like the idea of you taking children out of school. It's not their decision. It's your decision as the mother and the father of the child, whether your child goes into school or not, okay? Like I said, that is at theblackhomeschoolguide.com, theblackhomeschoolguide.com. I hope that's helpful, Kim. Lady Livia says Camilla Academy is an African-centered school. Guys, please check it out. I generally don't recommend resources that I haven't tried out myself or haven't thoroughly researched. So please do go check it out. I'm not saying that I'm recommending it, but Lady Livia says Camilla Academy is an African-centered homeschool. Oh, she says she's misspelled it. It's actually Kamali Academy. Okay. Mel says, is there a guide or some sort of way to know if you're teaching the correct materials for your child's age range, or does it matter when homeschooling? It doesn't matter, but if you're still nervous and a little bit insecure, which is perfectly understandable because you're just starting, use a box set, okay? Like I said, I recommend just type in homeschool box sets. I would also recommend just saying African-centered homeschool box sets and see what comes up, okay? Mel, I wish I could tell you I do not know what the Montessori approach is. I generally feel like I am the best person, or their father and I are the best people to educate our children. We have not just said it, we did it. And when our children did try out regular school years later, they were exceptional. You know, to the point that the teachers called me in and said, please tell me about this, because they had never heard about homeschooling. They said, please tell me about this homeschooling and tell me exactly what you're doing in there, because I can't believe how brilliant these children are. And it's not because our children are brilliant. It's because all children have the potential for brilliance, but it's more likely to be tapped into when they have individual attention. With a mom and 3 children or a mom and 2 children, your children get a better education than a teacher with 20, 30, I don't know how many, how big the school's classrooms are, Sometimes as small as 15 and 20, but still a whole gaggle of children who you don't really love and this is your job. That's a very different experience than when you love your children, you're really invested in their knowledge, understanding, education, experience, and at the same time, you're also grooming them to be exceptional human beings. So I think really there's no better school system than the homeschool system if you have a dedicated parent who really is doing their best to give their child the best education. Candace says, do you believe in using tutoring? Absolutely. I think I already said it before you asked the question. I said, feel free to use tutoring services. We use Kumon and we even use Kumon textbooks. I've heard of Sylvan, but never tried it. Please try things out. And if it works and you see your child grasping concepts better than when they're just doing it at home, absolutely. I recommend tutoring services for subjects that they're struggling with. If they're breezing through a subject, why get a tutor? But if there's a subject that you don't feel competent to teach them and they're struggling with it, I think that's when it's time to bring in a tutor. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a place where you actually go. It can be online, where you actually have a teacher on the other side, but the teacher isn't coming to the child isn't going to the teacher, they interact online. Because, homeschooling is, you want your children to get out and have experiences, but you don't want to be forced, to go into another environment like you were forced by school, right? I hope that makes sense. So you want to get out as much as you can, have as many extracurricular activities as you can. We used to sometimes go to the park with a couple of textbooks or a couple of books and just chill, read, write, do whatever. Draw, So homeschool didn't mean we were at home. It just meant we were learning during the day in our home environment. And sometimes our home environment was the park, the beach, a friend's house, whatever, okay? Family member's house. So please don't restrict yourself. please don't recreate the public school system at home and bore your children to death. This is an opportunity to have fun, to enjoy spending time with your children, and actually homeschool will cultivate you as a parent as much as it cultivates the children. There's a growing process that I believe as a parent you'll go through when you choose to educate your children at home, or at least guide them through their education process. I hope that's been helpful for you guys. That's it. It has been an hour. We don't have any more questions. We don't have any more questions, and we are at the end of our hour. Again, if you did not get your questions answered because you didn't ask them, please feel free to come back. We're here every single week, Thursdays, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, which is 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And if you're in Botswana and South Africa, it is 6 p.m. I'm here for you. And like I said, when I can, I do bring in other educators, teachers, homeschoolers who can also answer your questions and offer you some tips and resources. I hope this has been helpful. And one more time, if you haven't already enrolled in our homeschool guide course, it's at theblackhomeschoolguide.com. Also, please feel free to supplement your education or your children's education at the Black Business School. We do have a lot of children's courses that are in the areas of finance, business development, accounting, the things that we feel sometimes are missing from the public school system. We're teaching at the Black Business School. So feel free to go to theblackbusinessschool.com. And the course that I have that guides you through the beginning process of homeschooling is theblackhomeschoolguide.com, theblackhomeschoolguide.com. The first month is free. Please get enrolled, and then feel free to jump in there and ask me questions, and I'll be happy to help you. Thank you guys. My name is Nomalanga, and it's been my pleasure to help you.